These bills are piling up each day, and I can hardly keep up. Phew. I'm glad I made the right decision by keeping track of all my finances.
The year is 49 BCE. A Roman soldier wakes up expecting salt. Not metaphorical salt, but actual salt, aka salarium. That's his pay, that's dinner, and that's survival. Instead, he gets news. Caesar has crossed the Rubicon, which, if you translate from Latin, roughly means your paycheck just got politically complicated, his wages suspended, not because Rome is broke, not because the empire collapsed overnight, but because no one planned for this. No reserves, no buffer, no system. Within weeks, he's starving. And just like that, the first personal finance crisis isn't caused by bad math. It's caused by no plan at all. Cut to today. You, laptop open, staring at a rent notification like it personally offended your ancestors. Different costume, but same script. Let's rewind. Ancient Mesopotamia. Around 2000 BCE, humanity finally invents writing. You'd think it's for poetry, religion, and philosophy. Nope, it's for tracking grain. Budgeting is literally older than the alphabet. Before we wrote stories, we wrote receipts. Fast forward to Rome.
Again!
Yep. At its peak, the most powerful empire on Earth. And how does it fall? Not just invasions and politics, but a 300-year budgeting failure. They start diluting their currency, the denarius, less silver, more nonsense. The ancient version of we'll figure it out later. Spoiler, they didn't. You can conquer half the world, but if your books don't balance, eventually, nothing else does either. Now medieval Europe, the average peasant produces food and then hands most of it away. Roughly 40% to the Lord, 10% to the church. What's left? Survival. They didn't have a choice, but you do. That's what makes this worse. Here's the uncomfortable pattern. Financial collapse isn't new, it isn't rare, and it definitely isn't personal. It's the default setting. Every civilization that didn't deliberately organize its resources eventually collapsed. Every single one. This video is about making sure you're not Rome. Because a budget is not a spreadsheet or a cute little app you download, ignore, and then delete 3 weeks later when it starts judging you. It's a survival document. The people who actually made it, individuals, families, and entire empires, weren't the ones who earned the most. They were the ones who decided in advance where their resources would go before reality decided for them. So if budgeting feels unnatural, restrictive, or mildly offensive to your lifestyle, good. That just means you're historically accurate and ready to move from paycheck to making ends meet. You don't have a math problem, you have a psychology problem. And until you name it, no spreadsheet, no app, no financial guru with a ring light is going to save you. Because the real issue isn't that you can't budget, it's that your brain is quietly sabotaging the budget before you even open Excel. Let's start with the obvious offender, present bias. Your brain values now more than later. Not slightly more, dramatically more. $50 today feels better than $100 in 6 months, which is why you bought that thing. Yes, that thing. The one you justified as I deserve this. You didn't fail a financial test. You passed a biological one. Your brain is optimized for survival in environments where later wasn't guaranteed. Unfortunately, your rent is. Then there's mental accounting. This one is elegant. Your brain doesn't see money as money. It creates little imaginary buckets. Salary, serious money. Bonus, celebration money, tax refund, free money from the universe apparently. So you'll be struggling to pay bills while simultaneously booking a vacation with your extra cash. Mathematically ridiculous, psychologically consistent. Now it gets worse. The scarcity trap. When money is tight, your brain doesn't sharpen. It shrinks. Research shows financial stress can reduce cognitive bandwidth equivalent to losing around 13 IQ points, which means the worse your financial situation gets, the worse your ability to fix it becomes. So no, people aren't bad with money because they're dumb. Sometimes they look dumb because the situation is cognitively suffocating them. And the solution isn't try harder. It's reducing the number of decisions you have to make in the first place. Next, lifestyle inflation. You get a raise. Congratulations. Your expenses get a raise too. New phone, better food, slightly nicer everything. And within months, your upgrade becomes your baseline. That's hedonic adaptation. The treadmill where you run faster, just to stay in the same place. So income isn't the real variable, intentionality is. And finally, the one that makes budgeting feel like punishment, loss aversion. Losing $100 hurts about twice as much as gaining $100 feels good. So when you create a budget, every category feels like something is being taken away. Less eating out, less shopping, less fun. Your brain reads that as loss, even if the outcome is stability, or freedom, or not panicking at the end of every month. So you resist the very system designed to help you. Here's the point. None of this makes you broken. It makes you human. These patterns were built for short-term survival, not for managing subscriptions, rent, investments, and a 30-year retirement plan. But once you can name the system, you can start to override it. Because you can't fight an enemy you haven't identified. And before we talk about how to build a budget, we need to talk about why you would actually stick to one. Because you don't maintain systems you understand. You maintain systems you believe in. Most budgeting advice does something fascinating. It opens Excel immediately. No context, no purpose, just numbers. Because apparently the best way to change your life is to start with a spreadsheet you don't believe in. That's how you end up with a budget that feels less like a plan and more like a prison with a calculator. So before we touch anything practical, we need to answer a much more uncomfortable question. What is this money actually for? The Stoics figured this out a long time ago. Seneca put it simply, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Translation, your problem isn't income, it's uncontrolled desire. Stoicism wasn't about deprivation, it was about choice. Choosing what matters and then refusing to be ruled by everything else. That's what a budget really is. Not restriction, but selection. You're deciding in advance what gets access to your life. Everything else gets ignored. Now, a concept from Japan known as ma, it means space, not empty space, intentional space. In design, what you don't include is just as important as what you do. Apply that to money. The things you choose not to spend on, that's where your real life is built. Every unnecessary subscription you cut, every impulse you ignore, you're not losing anything. You're creating room. Room for stability, for options, for things that actually matter. Restraint isn't punishment, it's design. Then there's Viktor Frankl, a man who survived conditions most people wouldn't last a week in, and came out with a simple idea. Suffering is bearable if it has meaning. Now apply that to budgeting. Because let's be honest, budgeting involves saying no. No to things you want, no to things that feel good in the moment, and without a reason, that just feels like suffering. Pointless suffering. So the question becomes, what is your money building? Is it freedom, security, time, or creative work? A life that doesn't feel like quiet panic every 30 days. Pick one. Because if you don't define it, every financial decision will feel random. So here's the exercise. Forget being rich. What does enough look like? Not abstract, not financial freedom. Be specific. Where do you live? What does a normal day look like? What can you afford without thinking twice? What problems are gone? That picture? That's your North Star. Every decision becomes simple. Does this move me closer to that life or further away from it? Now you have three things. You've seen what happens without a plan. History made that clear. You've seen why your brain fights you. Psychology handled that. And now you know what you're actually aiming at. So now we can finally build the thing. A budget you can't maintain isn't a budget. It's a fantasy document, a guilt spreadsheet, a beautifully organized lie you abandon 3 Tuesdays later after ordering tacos at 1 a.m. because it's been a long week. So here's the rule. Don't build a system for your ideal self. Build one for the exhausted, impulsive, and convenience-addicted creature you actually are. Because that person is making most of your financial decisions. Step 1. Know your real numbers. Most people have absolutely no idea what they spend in a month. Not roughly, not I'm pretty responsible. Actual numbers. So your first task is painfully simple. Pull the last 30 days of bank and card statements. Every transaction, every coffee, every subscription, every small purchase your brain classified as financially invisible, then categorize them, and this is usually the moment the hallucination collapses. People who swear they barely spend on food discover they've effectively been sponsoring Uber Eats like it's a humanitarian mission. Subscriptions alone quietly consume alarming amounts of money because modern capitalism figured out something extraordinary. Humans will ignore almost any charge under $20. This is not a morality exercise. No shame, no guilt, just data. Because you cannot build a map if you're emotionally committed to pretending you're somewhere else. Step 2. Give every dollar a mission. This is called zero-based budgeting, which sounds aggressive, but it's actually simple. Every dollar gets assigned a job, not because you spent everything, but because you decided where everything goes before life improvises for you. Your money now falls into 4 categories. 1. Fixed necessities, which includes rent, insurance, and utilities, the things preventing you from becoming an outdoor philosopher. 2. Variable necessities, which includes groceries, transport, and healthcare. 3. Intentional spending. This matters. Not fun money, but intentional money. The things you genuinely value. And finally, future you. Savings, investments, debt repayment, and emergency fund. This category comes first, not last, because the average person saves whatever survives after spending, which is financially similar to eating everything on your plate and then trying to meal prep. Instead, save first, spend what remains. That one inversion changes everything. Step 3. Automate against your own brain. Your brain cannot be trusted consistently. That's not pessimism, that's anthropology. So automate the system. The day after payday, money moves automatically into savings before you even emotionally bond with it. Because money you never feel having doesn't trigger the same pain when it leaves. Then separate accounts. One for bills, one for spending, and one for savings. Why? Because friction matters. If buying something requires transferring money between accounts, your brain experiences a tiny interruption. And sometimes that interruption is enough to stop a stupid decision. Which is why the envelope system works. Physical or digital. When the dining budget is empty, it's empty. No advanced mathematical gymnastics. No I'll balance it later. No stealing from rent because sushi felt deserved. Step 4. Build the emergency mode. Most budgets don't fail because the plan was bad. They fail because reality happened once. Car repair, medical issue, lost job. One unexpected expense and the entire system detonates. Then people conclude, budgeting doesn't work.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
No, your system just had no shock absorber. That's what the emergency fund is. Not optional savings. Your financial immune system. Start with enough to survive common disasters, then build toward 3 to 6 months of basic expenses. The Romans understood this. Their grain reserve system, the annona, kept the empire alive during famine and war. When reserves existed, Rome survived crisis. When they didn't, people starved. Your emergency fund is your personal annona. Less cinematic. Same principle. Step 5. The weekly review. 10 minutes. That's it. Once a week, sit down and ask, did reality match the plan? Where did I drift? Why? This is not punishment. This is navigation. Pilots don't point the plane once and then emotionally hope for the best. They constantly correct course. That's what budgeting actually is. Not restriction, not suffering, but a system of small corrections that prevents catastrophic collapse later. Here's the uncomfortable part. The cost of bad budgeting is almost never dramatic at first. It's quiet. $20 here, a subscription there. Convenience layered on denial. And because nothing explodes immediately, the brain assumes everything is fine. But compound interest works in reverse too. If someone delays budgeting seriously for 5 years, that's not just 5 years lost. That's 5 years of unmanaged spending, missed savings, missed investing, accumulated stress, and financial decisions made reactively instead of deliberately. Over a decade, the number becomes grotesque. Not because you were reckless, because drift compounds. Tiny leaks sink ships very slowly. And then there's the stress tax. Financial anxiety quietly invades everything. Sleep becomes worse. Relationships become tense. Small inconveniences feel catastrophic because your nervous system is already overloaded. People think money problems are just money problems. They're not. They become health problems, attention problems, and emotional problems. Chronic financial chaos slowly consumes cognitive bandwidth until your entire life feels heavier than it should. A budget doesn't just protect money, it protects your mind from permanent low-grade panic. Remember the Roman soldier from the beginning. He had no reserve, no plan, no buffer between stability and collapse. But fortunately, you do. Or at least, you can. History does not need to repeat itself in your checking account. And contrary to what productivity culture tells you, disciplined budgeting does not turn you into a joyless monk eating plain rice under fluorescent lighting. What actually happens after 12 months is subtler. You begin feeling less afraid. Bills stop feeling like ambushes. Unexpected expenses become annoying instead of catastrophic. Options appear. You breathe differently. Not because you became rich, because you became aware. That's the real goal, not infinite money. Not becoming a finance influencer who says things like optimize your wealth velocity. The goal is to stop being surprised by your own life. Because a budget is fundamentally an act of self-respect. It's the decision that your future self deserves preparation instead of leftovers. And this brings us back to the Stoics. Freedom is not the ability to buy everything. Freedom is the ability to spend intentionally on what matters and remain completely unbothered by what doesn't. That's what a real budget builds. Not restriction, but peace. So here's the assignment. Not this weekend. Not when you have time. Tonight. Pull your last 30 days of bank statements. Just look. No guilt. No self-hatred. No dramatic life reset. Just look. That's step 1. I've also linked a downloadable budget planner in the description if you want a starting framework. And in the comments, what's the one financial thing you've been avoiding looking at? Name it. Because half of transformation is simply refusing to look away anymore.